Assalamun alaikum to everyone. Firstly, start Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Today we're going to be talking about Ramadan according to the Qur'an alone and reason. This video has been long awaited and it's taken me a long time to put it together. So I hope this really benefits everyone watching, and I think let's just jump straight into it. The first thing we have to understand is the framework by which we're working here is completely different to what we've been taught. The reason for this is because of this verse. فَبِأَيِّ حَدِيثٍ بَعْدَهُ يُؤْمِنُونَ. This is verse 7750 of the Qur'an. فَبِأَيِّ, then in what? حَدِيثٍ, narration. بَعْدَهُ, after it. يُؤْمِنُونَ, will they believe. This word here, hadith, it's almost like the Qur'an is foretelling the abuse of this word later on. The Qur'an claims that the Prophet on the last day will say that his people abandon this book. The recipients of the Qur'an will abandon the book. And that is exactly what has happened. This word hadith comes from the root ha-da-tha, or ha-da-tha, for the people that don't speak Arabic or can't read Arabic. It means narration, statement, speech. The Qur'an is telling us that the book is whole, complete, perfect. And quite literally, if it is from God, which it is, then in what else after it will you believe? So our framework is different because this alone completely forbids the idea that any legislation can be taken from an outside source other than the Qur'an, because of the status it claims for itself and the status it has. Another verse, I won't read the Arabic here for time purposes. However, the Arabic is here and the reference is here. For those who do speak Arabic, you can go and check. Just as a side note, all translations here are from the translation, The Qur'an, A Complete Revelation by Sam Gerrans. If you want to go and check the Arabic, you can, because the English is extremely accurate to the text of the Arabic. And furthermore, I'm not taking my opinions from the English. I have considered all these things with care. And once again, you can go and check that yourself. It says, and had all that is in the earth of trees been but pens, and all the sea replenished thereafter, with 7 seas, the words of God would not be exhausted. God is exalted in might and wise. What the Qur'an is telling us is that if God intended to say anything more than he did in his final, complete, perfect, fully detailed revelation to mankind, he would have. These are not statements to be taken in vain. And that's why our framework is completely different. So, if you deny this framework, then not only are you denying the truth, but you are denying the Qur'an, the book that many claim to believe is from God and take it as their legislative scripture. What will happen as a response to that is there will be a few responses to videos like these. The first one is that, you watch it all the way through and you accept the premises. Great. The second one is you deny after watching it all the way through. That's also fine because you considered with reason. At least you did consider. But then there's the other category, which is like, you click off the video, firstly because you can't be bothered. Well, if you can't be bothered, then I think it's a crime to claim that you care about this book and you care about God and his laws. What seems to happen is that there's a buffer system which is taught to us from a young age, or wherever you were taught, quote unquote, Islam. And the primary one is, well, I don't understand Arabic. Well, I know people who don't speak Arabic, who can barely read the letters, and they still understand this stuff because they care. The information is out there. The second one is that, oh, well, you're not a scholar. I'm not a scholar. How we need to consult the scholars. As we will see in the text, this is an excuse. This book was written for us, and the scholars are just men like us. And we have been lied to about what this book really wants from us and what it's saying. So let's start. And just before that, I'd like to say a verse. It says in the Qur'an, وَلَا تَلْبِسُوا الْحَقِّ بِالْبَاطِلِ وَتَكْتُمُوا الْحَقِّ وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. Don't dress the truth in falsehood and conceal the truth when you know. So it's a crime to read these and accept these as true and not care about the fact that the very legislation we were given of how they approach this text violates the very clear statements in the book itself. You can't run from it. Unfortunately, this stuff is not easy as well. It's not a simple thing to go through. It takes effort and time and care. But this is what we're going to do today. We're going to break it down simply as intended to hopefully facilitate ease in understanding for both Arabic and non-Arabic speakers. Let's start with the first verse on fasting. This is the second chapter, verse 183. It says, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu. O you who heed warning. This book is written for the people who heed warning. Not the scholars, not Bukhari, not Muslim. It's the people who heed warning. As far as I'm concerned, I'm a person who believes this text is from God. I believe this book is from God. And I am of those who heed warning. I have access to it here. This book is for us. And the Qur'an is very clear in stating that. It says, Kutiba alaykum as-siyam. Fasting is prescribed for you. Kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablakum. As it was prescribed for those before you. Let's stop here for a second. The Qur'an is making clear that the people before us, the people before the recipients of the Qur'an, were also told to fast. But you see that the practice in Christendom of fasting is completely different to the so-called Ramadan month that the so-called Muslims fast in. But what we're going to show is that actually what the Qur'an is asking us to do is much more similar to the way the Christians may fast in Lent, or the Hindus may fast when they just take, they do it voluntarily, and they not make up in terms of fabricate, but they out of their own whim and own intuition decide to fast for a certain number of days per month or per year or whatever it may be. We're going to get back to this word siyam, but it says, we stopped here, as it was prescribed for those before you. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. So, what we see here is that the purpose of the fast is not to complete the number of days, it's not to go through Ramadan and do it. The purpose of the fast is that you might be in prudent fear of God. If you did not accomplish that goal through the fast, that is what nullifies your fast. The goal of fasting is to be in prudent fear of God. The reason being is because when you cut off food, when you cut off the cardinal desires, your soul gets closer to God in its state. And that's when you get revelation. We will approach this idea furthermore later. So let's break down this word, as-siyam. Okay? As-siyam, fasting. What is fasting from the Qur'an? Here it says, just to flip the page, just to give the reference, this is in verse 187 of Surah Al-Baqarah. So literally just a few verses after the first fasting verse. It says, أُحِلَّ لَكُمْ لَيْلَةَ الصِّيَامِ الرَّفْثُ إِلَى نِسَائِكُمْ. Okay? It says, it is made lawful for you on the night of your fast to go in onto your women. So this is telling us that, firstly, during the fast, there is no sexual intercourse with the spouse. So this is the first thing we understand from the Qur'an. The second thing we understand from the Qur'an is, it says, I'm not going to read this in Arabic, but again, you can go to the verse. It says, actually no, I will read it from the Arabic. It says, وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمْ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ من الفجر ثم أتم الصيام إلى الليل. What does this mean? And eat and drink until clear to you be the white thread from the black thread of the dawn. Then complete the fast until night. The second injunction that God is telling us, again, this is in just a few verses after that fasting verse, is that we are to fast from sunrise to sunset. But does that mean, because here it says, until clear to you, then complete the fast until night. Does that mean when it goes dark? Well, you can argue here that in the Quran, in verse 79-29, it says, and he made dark its night and brought forth its morning. So God can make the night darker. So this is telling us that you fast from sunrise to sunset. Although, sometimes at sunset it's not completely dark and it's not completely night, but we are seeing here that God can make darker its night. Once again, we're taking everything, all our legislation from the Quran. You can also argue in Surah 19 verse 26, God instructs Mary, so eat thou and drink thou, and let your eyes be comforted. And if you see any mortal, say, I have vowed to the Almighty a fast. Sawman, here, the word, Sawman. Okay? I have vowed to the Almighty a fast, so I will not speak this day to any man. We can also argue that perhaps fasting from the Quran incurs that we actually have a speech fast as well. So it's a fast from sexual intercourse, a fast from food and drink, from sunrise to sunset, and also speech. However, you can argue that perhaps this is not part of the fast that God ordains in this verse, in the first fasting verse of the second chapter, 183, because these verses here are found very close to that verse, and this one is somewhere else. Again, this is why we use reason. So let's move on to the lexicons, meaning the dictionaries. What do the dictionaries say about siyam? This is coming from Hans Weir, page 126. I'm giving all the references. This is from the online version. I have here the paperback version. This is the third edition from 1976. It's quite different in here, the references, obviously because of the editions and stuff like that. The dictionaries I'm using is this, and also Lane's Lexicon, but, we will go into that later. The root of the word siyam comes from the Arabic root sawama, Sad, waw, mim, okay, for those who don't speak Arabic. So this is Sad, waw, mim. It means to abstain from food and drink, sexual intercourse. One thing from this position, we do not take the lexicons as authoritative. one argument, this is not the point of this video, but one argument that is pushed forth constantly by people who refute the position is they say, well, you know, you say that you take everything from the Qur'an. How do you even know that the words mean what they mean? We are even questioning this too. And we will get into that a bit later on, actually quite soon. One thing upon discovery, again, this is not totally the point of this video, but Arabic works in root words. The whole language works in root words. Just like everything in nature, everything comes from a source, from an element. The argument of, you know, you're taking the meanings from outside of the Qur'an is rendered null if Arabic itself is a natural language, whereby even the letters themselves have a separate meaning. Because in the Qur'an it claims that this book is a tanzil, it's almost like a sending down, a contraction from God. Therefore the language used must be directly representative of what God wants. Also, God claimed to preserve the Qur'an, so in that it means its meaning. We have here a very famous verse in the second surah, verse 18. It says, Summun bukmun umyun fahum la yarji'un. Deaf, dumb, blind, so they will not return. This word deaf here, as you can see, it has the sad and the meme. This is just SM, if you like, for the English speakers. It doesn't have the wow, but it has the sad meme. When we look in the lexicons for this idea of the root sad meme, they say this root is coming from the root sa meme meme, SMM, if you like. Very similar to what was given before for fasting, which is sawama. What you start to see when you break down the Arabic language is that the very root system that was given to us, because you've got to remember, all these books were written by Orientalists, either German Arabists or French Arabists, you know, or English Arabists. How do we know that the very root system they gave us was true? We are questioning that also here. And this is, again, going back to our first statement. In what narration after it will they believe? We are staying true to this statement. We are breaking down everything and every assumption. The only thing we know for sure is that this book and this text within the book is from God and preserved. That's all we have that's true. Everything else is up for question. Back to the point. What we have is when we break down the sad meme meme root for deaf, summun, is we get these meanings: to become deaf, to plug, to close, to cork, to stop, to deafen, to determine. Isn't this similar to the idea of fasting? It's a corking, it's a stopping, it's a muting of the passions, a muting of the desires. We see here, you know, simam, same idea, safety valve, throttle valve, air valve, bomb fuse, to make deaf, become deaf, to deafen. Again, plug, cork, stopper, deafness. How interesting. Well, let's play with the root even more. When you get, again, these same letters of the sad and the meme, these are actually the same three letters that are used in the root that they're giving us, that the word siyam comes from. Sad, wow, meme, but they're just flipped around. Wow, sad, meme. So this is wow, sad, meme. Well, we start to, it's almost, because there's a flipping of the root, you almost get the opposite meaning. When you fast, it makes you pure. So if you flip it, you get to stigmatize, to mark a disgrace. a mark of disgrace, tarnish, blemish, afflict with a blemish, sullied. As you can see, the Arabic language is like no other language. The letters in and of themselves, very evidently, because have separate meaning. Now, to prove this even more, if we just replace one letter from this root here, okay, this root is Sad, Mim, Dal. Samad, this is a very famous word in Surah Al-Ikhlas, the 112th chapter. Samada, it means, to withstand, to resist, to oppose, to hold out, hold one's ground, remain unaffected, to close, This idea of a determination, a standing, they all have similar ideas to the idea of Sawm. Again, proving that these words are not just arbitrary meanings, they're given meanings. What we find as well is, I hope this is not becoming too confusing, but for this root they gave us, which is Sad Mim Mim, this word is written Samma, okay? So it has something in Arabic called a shadda, which is basically in a way saying that it has, the root really is Sad Mim Mim, like here. This is something we find all over the text. Again, this idea is not the point of this presentation, but it's very necessary to mention, just as a side point. And just on that, just to finish up on these points, they have to tell you the truth. They will obscure the truth. The Satan, this idea of Satan, which is another point, can never cover the truth. This is why the Qur'an cannot be corrupted, because God preserved the truth. But he can corrupt it. He can stop you from reading it. He can obscure the meanings, but he can't change it. That's what we're trying. We are whittling down the impurity to come back to the purity. This is shown in this verse. And the Satan will say, when the matter is concluded, God promised you the promise of truth, and I promised you, but I betrayed you. And had I not over you any authority except to call you, and you responded to me. We are the ones who took the scholars as gods and believed what they said without considering what the Qur'an said. But we can't play victim, so blame not me, but blame yourselves. I cannot aid you, and you cannot aid me. I deny your ascribing to me a partnership before. The wrongdoers, for them is a painful punishment. It is our duty to find out the truth, no matter how hard, no matter how difficult, no matter how much studying goes into it. If you want it, it's there. But do not be so naive to think that this book, this powerful book from God, would not have every form and every type of conspiracy set up against it in order for you to stop reading it and use your God-given reason and your God-given intellect to discern its meanings as it asks you to do, in its complete, perfect, fully detailed form. Arabic certainly is a divine language. It says in the Qur'an, in the second verse of Surah Yusuf, إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَاهُ قُرْآنًا عَرَبِيًّا لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. Indeed, we have sent it down as an Arabic recitation that you might use reason. And we have shown through our playing of the lexicon that you can indeed use reason. To move on, the second verse of fasting is the one straight after. It's verse 184. It says, أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَاتٍ, for days numbered. So what we are seeing firstly is that the Quran is telling us to fast for a certain number of days. Not one day, a certain number of days. This will make more sense in a minute, but let me just explain something. It doesn't specify how many days. It's telling us a certain number of days. That is up to you. What we find in the Quran is the law is very similar. Let me give you an analogy to one wandering through an airport, and his friend told him, let's say I said to you, we're going to go to Thailand, and we're in the UK right now. But before you go to Thailand, make sure you stop in India and Indonesia, for example, and make sure on your way that you bought a Kit Kat bar. And you arrive in Thailand, and I said, did you stop in India? You said yes. Did you stop in Indonesia? And you said yes. Did you buy a Kit Kat bar? You said yes. And did you arrive in Thailand? You said yes. You have completed the duty. Whether you stepped with your right foot into the plane or your left foot into the plane, or you blew your nose and said whatever words, it doesn't matter. The duty is the duty. There's certain parameters. As long as you meet the milestone, this is what matters. And this is how most of the law in the Qur'an works. For example, when the Qur'an says to give a dowry, the traditional understanding is there's no injunction of how much dowry, and that's what the Qur'an says. It's up to you. But why doesn't everything work in this way? We need to be careful not to become how the Bani Israel were in the Surah Al-Baqarah, in the second chapter of the Quran, where they kept asking about the details of the cow. When they say the devil is in the details, it's true. So this is unfortunately what Muslims these days, quote unquote, if you even want to call them that, have become. So yeah, what the Quran is saying after, it says, فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ, and whoso among you is sick or on a journey, فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ, then a number of other days. So the first thing we have is, it's telling us, if you're sick or on a journey, then you can do a number of other days. I think the traditional understanding appreciates this. But this is where things start to change. وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ يُطِيقُونَهُ, and for those who are able to do it. Let's just break this down. For the people who are able to do it. The word here is يُطِيقُونَهُ. The verb is طاقة, okay, or طاقة. It takes a direct object. The direct object is, in grammar, it's the thing that undergoes the verb. So, طاقة here means to be able to do something. The direct object, what is that thing that you're able to do? It's the fast. That's represented by the nahu at the end. So, for the people who are able to do the fast, this is what it's saying. Okay? Fidyatun. There's a redemption. Well, that's not what we were told. What the Quran is saying is that actually, if you are able to fast, there's a redemption for you not to do it. And then what does it say? It says, طَعَامُ مَسْكِينٍ, feeding a needy person. This is totally different to the presentation we were given, and it's very clear in the text. If you don't have to do this fast, if you are healthy and well, there's a way out of it, but it's feeding a needy person. But it says after, فَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ خَيْرًا, and who does good voluntarily, فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُ, it is better for him. وَإِن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ, and that you fast is better for you. إِن كُنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. I want to just go through something else here, which is quite an interesting point. The Quran is saying carefully that doing the fast is actually better for you, if you would know. There's a few reasons for this. I have referenced here, I'll just bring it up closer to the camera, a study. This is the DOI, so if you put this in onto the, PubMed or wherever, you'll find this study. The Qur'an is saying that it's better for us to do the fast, and not only a fast for one day, a fast for a certain number of days. This study is referencing, the current literature on fasting, and it's saying that there's a process called autophagy, which comes in. Autophagy is basically it's a self-destruction of components within cells that get broken down after they've been used, or they're debris or whatever, by these things called lysosomes, which are organelles in a cell. Organelles meaning tiny organs in a cell. They contain this enzyme called lysozyme, and the enzyme actually breaks down cellular components that are no longer in use. This process of autophagy is a process that takes place after, it's actually regulated by this product called TOR. TOR can only kick in the body after 3 days. So autophagy only takes place after 3 days. And what the Qur'an is actually saying is that it's better to do the fast if you would know, because doing it for obviously more days than one, this would take place. We don't need to go into, the benefits of fasting. I mean, another one just off of the top of my head is there's a certain hormone called motilin, which is produced by the endocrine cells in the upper small intestine. Motilin makes the small intestine contract as if, imagine I've got a hose here and I squeeze it like this and I wring out everything outside. This type of contraction, which is called peristalsis, can only take place in the intestine only when there is motilin present, and motilin can only be in the intestine in a fasted state after a certain number of days. I don't like to attribute science to the Qur'an, but this is rather remarkable information. More so on a spiritual level. When it says, if you would know, what we mentioned before is that what fasting do is it breaks the cardinal desires. You get closer to God. What we will see in the following verse is this idea come into fruition. You get closer to God, you get insights. I can give you my own personal testimony on this. When you fast, God gives you certain insights. You see things from a different perspective. It's almost like a natural way of getting high. You get certain insights and realizations. It reminds me of the famous Nietzsche quote, the thought doesn't come to you when you think of it, you think of it when it comes to you. That God will inspire certain things, certain thoughts within you, enlightening thoughts. And it's a way of getting closer to God. Again, the purpose of the fast is nothing more than that we have taqwa, that we have prudent fear of God. And, we saw that here, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, that you might be in prudent fear. This is the purpose. To continue. Now, this is where real attention and real detail comes into play. This is where the traditionalist obscured the true meaning of the Qur'an and what its injunction in these verses, in these fasting verses, is asking us to do. So in the third fasting verse, following it, it says, Shahru Ramadan. Let's break that down. The word shahr in Arabic has, by convention over time, come to mean month. However, this is not entirely true and loyal to the Arabic. Let's first look at the Quranic understanding of what shahr means. I won't read the Arabic here, but this is Surah 10 verse 5. It says, He, as in God, it is that made the sun an illumination and the moon a light, and He determined for it phases that you might know the number of years and the reckoning, meaning, you're able to tell the number of years and months and whatever. God created that not except for in truth, and he sets out and details the proof for people who know. Again, God is claiming that he's detailed, he's made everything clear. What the Qur'an is saying is that the moon and the sun, the moon especially, was given to us to determine the number of years. The position of the Qur'an is not that we work off of a Gregorian calendar. It's saying that we work off of the God-given natural calendar, which is via the moon and the sun, but primarily the moon, because it comes in phases, and we can tell how, a whole month from the moon. Once again, this is another verse. It says, "And we appointed the night and the day as two proofs, and we erase the proof of the night and make the proof of day sight-giving, that you might seek favour of your Lord, and that you might know the number of years and the reckoning, and everything have we set out and detailed with full explanation." Again, with full explanation, everything is detailed. So, understanding this idea that what the purpose of the moon and the sun are, according to the Qur'an, is that they were given to us to understand the number of years. Let's continue. So let's look at the dictionary meaning of this word shahr, which was given here at the beginning of this verse, Shahru Ramadan. They claim it means the month of Ramadan, but we shall see it doesn't necessarily mean that. Shahr, the root of shahr, is this: sha, sheen, ha, ra, shahara. In Hanswehr, page 572 on the online version, it says, the root shahara means to make something well known, famous, renowned, notorious. To announce, unsheath, become well known, famed. Proclaim. What the Qur'an, the root shahra actually means is not month. It means something well known. Again, here's some more meanings. You can look at them for yourselves. By convention, this has come to mean month as well. Why? Very important here to listen carefully. Because the month is signified by the new moon. Because the moon is something conspicuous. The moon is something which is, it's well known. It announces itself. You see it, again, according to all these things. This is why we say honeymoon, because in Arabic, the word, it actually comes from the Arabic, shahr al-asal, honeymoon. In English, we see, for example, we say many moons ago, or once in a blue moon. This is saying, again, once in a month, in a certain month. We can see this through the text. It's saying the moon of Ramadan, and we will see what Ramadan means in a second, but it's not saying, it can't be divorced from its true meaning. Yes, it means month, but the month is signified by the moon. Also, here's a more detailed grammatical point. There is no definite article here. It doesn't say ash-shahr. It doesn't say the month. It says month, shahr. If Ramadan was a proper noun, if it was the actual name of a month, it would say the month of Ramadan. But it doesn't say that. It just says, it would say ash-shahru Ramadan, the month of Ramadan. It doesn't say that. It just says shahru Ramadan. So what we can see here is that actually Ramadan is an adjective. It's describing this moon, this month. So, one thing I just wanted to break down, which I will show at the end of the video, because this is not the point of this video. I will show you how we can look at the various roots of this word shahr and mix them around, as we did with the sawama root and the sad mim mim root that I just showed you before for siyam, for fasting, and show how this same idea in Arabic applies. But I will put that at the end of the video, because it's not necessarily the main point of this video. But for people who are interested, you can go to that and have a look. So we've seen what shahr means. So let's actually now have a look at what Ramadan means. Here, on the meaning of Ramadan. This is the only instance of this root in the whole Qur'an. The root of Ramadan comes from Ra, Mim, Dad, Ramada. I guess you could put that, Dad, Ramada, here in the Arabic. This is from Lane's lexicon. This is from Hans Weir here. And this is from Lane's lexicon. So 2 different dictionaries used it. What we see is Ramada actually means to be consumed by grief and sorrow. Parchedness, scorchedness. Okay? Ramada, sunbaked. To jump out of the... So it's saying something that is hot, something vehemently hot. Intense heat, a grief, a sorrow. Just as a side point, if you mix the roots, you can actually get marada, which in Arabic, for the Arabic speakers here, knows it means to be sick, which has similar connotations. Again, we will show this at the end of the video. From Lane's lexicon, we see, that Ramada means the earth or ground and the stones became vehemently heated by the sun. This is not saying that the name of a month. I know here it says Ramadan, the 9th month of the Muslim calendar, but this is because the lexicons, again, were written by people and they've made assumptions over time. But the original meaning of this root, again, you can prove this, which I'll show at the end of the video, when you start to flip it around, that it means grief and sorrow, something hot, something scorchedness, okay? Again, Lane's lexicon is saying the same thing. Our day became intensely hot. He had his feet burnt by the ground or stones vehemently heated by the sun. We must, again, it says, I showed that verse before where it said, we have sent down the Qur'an as an Arabic recitation. We can't deny this fact that the Arabic is saying something different. So, once we go back to this verse here, we are seeing that it's actually saying the moon. So, this, when you see the new moon, meaning month, of scorched heat, it's just describing what this month was like. الذي أنزل فيه القرآن is, so we have here a moon of scorching heat was that in which the Qur'an was sent down. What it's describing is that the Qur'an was sent down during a time where essentially it was very hot. What it's claiming is that guidance comes during hardship. Guidance comes, so when you're in a state, a very extreme fasted state, or the fast is very hard, that's when the guidance comes. That's when the juice comes from God. He gives you revelations. He gives you certain insights into things. Again, this is going back to the idea of, if only you would know that how good the fasting is because that's what it does to you. The purpose of this is to make you in prudent fear of God. And we are seeing this here, that the Qur'an is claiming that during a difficult month, during a time of hardship, is when the Qur'an came down. هُدًى لِلنَّاسِ وَبَيِّنَاتٍ مِّنَ الْهُدَى, a guidance for mankind and clear signs of the guidance. وَالْفُرْقَانِ, and of the division. The Qur'an is claiming it is the Furqan, it is the division. This is the criterion, which is another meaning of the word Furqan. The criterion by which we take legislation, by which we take order and law. This is it. Not anything else. Again, being true to that first statement of which hadith after this will you take. I forgot to mention when we were talking about the root Ramada and what the true meaning of Ramada is. In Sanskrit, there's a word Ramdian, which obviously sounds similar to Ramadan. Sanskrit also works in root forms and root words, and it's interesting when you break down this root. Ram in Sanskrit means one who shines in the heart, and Dhyan means to meditate. Is this not more flavoursome of what these verses are trying to tell us? I just thought that's an interesting point. The next verses the next part of this verse that we're going to go through is the most difficult part of this whole presentation, but it's also the most important. It's very important to listen attentively, because this is exactly where they get you. If you're not prudent enough and diligent enough to look at this, and of course for the non-Arabic speaker, or the one who doesn't really care for the grammar, it just slips your eye, especially if you read it from a translation, and they can pretty much utilize and shoot and bait and switch all the grammatical rules here to serve their purpose. But we're going to show exactly how they do that and why it can't mean what they say it means. So let's start here. Let's break down these three words here. فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمْ الشَّهْرَ. Okay, فَمَنْ, so whoso, shahida, witnesses, minkum, among you. So what these three words mean is, so whoso among you witnesses. Okay? I want you to pay attention to this word shahida. So whoso amongst you witnesses. When it says witnesses, it literally means like to see with your own eyes. So it's talking about something specific. Before we go into what this really means, let's talk about what they want you to think it means and how they do this. They want you to think this means فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمْ, so whoso amongst you witnesses, al-shahr, the month. And when they say the month, they mean the month called Ramadan. فَلْيَصُومَهُ, so fast during it, fast that period. We've already established here that if Ramadan, well, obviously we've shown the meaning of Ramadan, and we've shown that shahr is also moon, but we've also said before that if Ramadan was an actual proper noun, if it was the name of a month, it would say al-shahr Ramadan. It would have something grammatically called a definite article. It would say the month of Ramadan, but it doesn't say that. It just says a month / moon, again, knowing what shahr means, of scorching heat. It's just an adjective describing what that moon was like when the Qur'an came down, as we said before. So once again, they want you to think this says, so whoso amongst you witnesses the month of Ramadan, so fast in it. They can do this for a few reasons. The first reason is because obviously here it helps them. The fact that the word month or moon here, which they just says mean month, they ignore the fact that it means moon, takes on a definite article, the moon. If they can make you think Ramadan is the name of a month, this works perfectly. So whoso amongst you witnesses the month, and they're obviously saying the is referring to the name, Ramadan. The second reason they can do it is because فَلْيَصُومَهُ means to fast it, okay, or to fast during it. Well, we'll see that it doesn't actually mean that, but to fast during it. And what is it referring to? It's referring to the month. And what's the month? Well, the month of Ramadan. That's what they want it to mean, but we'll see how it doesn't mean that. Let's break down the grammar here even further. We've seen that obviously the shahr, the word moon, we are saying it means moon by convention, month. I'm using the words interchangeably to reiterate the point. El is obviously a definite article. It's referring to, it's saying the moon. Well, that makes sense now, because and also this fits the word witness, shahida, because you can witness the moon. Okay? We're not saying that Ramadan is the name of month, it's just an adjective. So in our presentation, this actually makes sense with the grammar. So whoso amongst you witnesses the moon, okay? فَلْيَصُومَهُ, let him fast in it. Well, what is it? Well, the moon, the month. One thing here that's very important, the word shahr doesn't take on a preposition. A preposition in Arabic is a word used before a noun to indicate direction, time, place, location. If I said this pen, for example, if I say before the pen, after the pen, above the pen, below the pen, through the pen, all these words are prepositions. The word al-shahr in Arabic doesn't take a preposition. And any time in the Arabic language that a noun doesn't take a preposition, it means in or on. So what this is saying is actually, so whoso amongst you witnesses the moon, which is indicative of the new month, basically, let him fast in it. Let him fast that certain number of days he chose in that month. As you can see, the grammar fits, and obviously the true meanings of the word fits the presentation. And all it is when you just understand that Ramadan is not the name of a month, it's just an adjective describing the certain month that the Qur'an came down in. That's all. And again, just to conclude those points, because they're very important, the reason they can do this is for these three grammatical reasons. Number one, because there's a definite article on shahr. They want the month to refer to, the with a capital T. They want the month to refer to the 9th month of the Muslim calendar called Ramadan, but doesn't mean that. Secondly, they want the word sama, to fast. Obviously, it takes on a direct object. The direct object is the thing that undergoes the verb. It says fast it. What is it? The month. We've shown that the month is just referring to the new moon. It does not refer to this month called Ramadan. And lastly, they do it because there's no preposition on the noun. They want you to think this says fast during the month. I want to show you something. In Lane's lexicon here, he says, this is Lane, this is on page 1759. Lane says that Sama ash-shahr means Sama fi shahr for the Arabic speakers, or fasting in the month is the same thing as fasting during the month. As you can see, Lane has added a word here, fi, in Arabic, which means during. But in the text, it doesn't take on a preposition. So he's, again, shoehorning things in the text to assume conclusions. Sama ash-shahr means fast in the month. It doesn't mean fast during the month. And once again, just to say, moon is synonymous with month, because the new month is indicative of the new moon. In conclusion, so whoso amongst you witnesses the moon with his own eyes, let him fast in it. Okay? To continue. Oh, and one thing I want to mention as well is the Qur'an is very... It's always notifying you of your death. It's always saying that just because you were here to witness the last moon and you fasted during the month that it commenced, doesn't mean you're going to be here for the next one. Anyone who's read the Qur'an knows that the foretelling of your death is a constant theme within the text. To continue, it says, وَمَنْ كَانَ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. And whoso of you is sick or on a journey, then a number of other days. This is part of the verse we've seen before. One thing the Qur'an uses repertoire in order to reiterate or make a point. The fact that, look, if you're sick or on a journey, you don't have to do this. You could do it another number of other days. We've even been given a redemption. if you don't want to do it, and you're well and healthy, you don't have to. You just feed a needy person, as we mentioned before. And then here it says, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. God desires for you ease, and He desires not for you hardship. Is not fasting a few days per month easier than doing 30 days? In fact, it's more effective, because what you get is, instead of getting this one 30-day period that you purify yourself and then everyone just goes off and does whatever for the rest, you have these every month, these periods, these purification periods. It's much more effective, and it's easier. And then to finalize, it says, وَلِتُكَمِّلُوا الْعِدَّةَ وَلِتُكَبِّرُوا اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. This goes back to the first point we made. But that you complete the number, and that you magnify God for guiding you, and that you might be grateful. That's the whole point of this. It's not to just do it. It's to gain something from it. It's so that you're in prudent fear of God. It's so that you are grateful for the bounties and the blessings that God bestowed upon you. That's the point, and you do that by completing the number. So, as you can see, this part is very difficult, and it's very grammatically terse. And you can see here in the lexicons how they try and hide these points from you. But once you get past the fact that shahr actually means moon, indicative of a new month, and Ramadan is just a description of a certain time being hot, you can see that the grammar perfectly fits, and the wording perfectly fits. So, in conclusion, understandably that it got a bit confusing, but what can we summarize from what we've learned? And from these summaries, you can go back and see how we broke everything down. Number one, we understand the Qur'an cannot be understood by outside sources. It is complete and perfect in every way. Meaning, you can understand it without the Hadith literature, as we have shown. We are instructed to fast from sunrise to sunset, and you can also possibly argue that also the fast includes other things, which we'll go into now. The purpose of the fast is to learn to be in prudent fear of God. Anything else, it's not to do the number of days or whatever. It's the purpose of fasting is to achieve this. If you haven't achieved this through fasting, you didn't achieve what God wanted us to do. We are to fast for a certain number of days in each month. So each time we witness the moon, we are to fast that set number of days which we have allocated for ourselves. Some it may be 10, some it may be 4. Personally, I do 4 or 5 days a month. Okay? That's what the Quranic injunction is. It's not to fast during the whole month. There is no month called Ramadan, as we described before through the various reasons. That is just describing a state of the month that the Quran came down in was a very hot one. And it's telling us that if you experience hardship during your fast, it's good, because that's when the guidance comes. That's all it's saying. Again, the number does not specify. It does not specify in the Quran how many days, but it has to be a plural number. Okay? You can do other days in that month if you're sick or on a journey. There is a redemption, this is what they don't tell us, which is clear in the text, for the one who can fast but chooses not to, and that redemption is feeding a needy person. The next thing is God created the moon's phases for us to know the number of years, months and days. Shahr means moon, and by convention means month, because we know the months through the changes in the moon cycle, and the new moon is indicative of the new month. Ramadan means something of scorching heat, internally, externally. E.g., example, a heat on the sand, heat inside of you from fasting or from sorrow. So what is the final conclusion of what these verses say? They say we are instructed whenever we witness each moon, meaning each month, come to each month, to refrain from food, drink, and sex, and you can possibly argue also, speech, from sunrise to sunset for a certain number of days within that month. That is all. The Qur'an does not ask us to do anything else. This is what these verses mean, which is much simpler. It's much more manageable. It's much purer for your soul. What's the point of just fasting 1 month in the year? Why not do it every month? Instead of it being, one time like this, it's constant, that you have these purification phases every month for a short period of time. The benefits are countless, to be honest, and each person to their own and their own benefit. So just to conclude, the Quran, just because they tell you what it means, it doesn't mean it means what it means. The Quran, it says in Surah 56 verse 79, that the people who understand the Quran, not the people who know Arabic or whatever, it's the purified. None will touch it, meaning none will understand it, except those purified. In this verse, I just want to focus on here, the last part. Okay, it says, O mankind, be in prudent fear of your Lord, and fear the day a father will not avail his child, nor will a child avail his father anything. The promise of God is true. So let not the life of this world delude you, and let not the deluder delude you about God. Have we not been deluded from what the text itself is very clearly saying? And finally, O mankind, the promise of God is true. So let not the life of this world delude you, and let not the deluder delude you about God. The same idea. Do not be deluded. It's very clear what the Quran is asking. And just because it goes against what you've been taught, as we said before, don't dress the truth in falsehood, and don't conceal the truth when you know, because now you do. And it's much clearer. The Quran is very clear in what it wants. We must be true to it. Thank you very much for listening. I hope it has been a benefit. And again, stick around to the end of this to see how you can play with the roots of the words shahr and Ramadan to see how amazing the Arabic language is, and the fact that it must necessarily be a divine language. This part of the video is kind of a bonus for the person who's more interested in how beautiful and how interesting the Arabic is. When you start to play with the roots and the root letters in the root word, you actually kind of start to get similar meanings. As we can see, let's start right at the top there, here. We have shahara. I wrote them in English as well. That's obviously, we've already seen that shahara, because it's in the verse, means something conspicuous, something well known. Again, that refers to the moon, because the moon is conspicuous, the moon is well known. The moon comes out, it shines bright, it makes itself clear, it makes itself apparent, because each moon is indicative of the new month. That's why the word, shahr by convention means month in Arabic. We've said before that, you've got this idea of, many moons ago, or the honeymoon, the shahr al-asal, or once in a blue moon. These are the understanding of the language has come down over time, but it's diluted. What happens when we change here, when we change shahra to sharaha? Well, we get kind of a interestingly but similar meaning. To be greedy, gluttonized. When you're greedy, it's something apparent. It's almost forceful. Again, it's not the same meaning, but it's a similar flavor, if you like. If we take shahara and change the ra for a dal, we get shahada, which is to witness. And that's actually, when it says in the verse which we just went through who shahad ash-shahr. It's to witness, because you can only witness something if it's clear, if it's conspicuous, if it's well known. You see how the letters are breeding the same meanings. There are more, in again, if we look in Lane's lexicon, sorry, not in Lane's lexicon, in Hans Wehr's dictionary here, I've noted a few things down which I didn't write on the board because they're not so important, but you get rasha or hasha, and rasha, like if you have a rash, rash is probably a cognate, because a rash is conspicuous, a rash is seen. It's the same letters, it's from the same root. Now let's go into the word Ramadan. We saw Ramadan means something scorched, grief, sorrow, intense heat. Let's flip the root letters around. Marada means to be sick, to fall ill. Are you not scorched when you're ill? Are you not in grief and sorrow when you're ill? We have now here madda, which is the third one, madda. Oftentimes when you see that the root has a shadda on it, it's actually just the shadda on, which is here again for the Arabic speakers on the da, is actually just saying that there's two of them. So madada, okay? Madda means to hurt, pain, sting, distress, torture, agonize. Is that not similar? Or madara, the one underneath, madara, means to turn sour. Again, let's take da and ra are still in the root of Ramadan. Dara, okay, it's got a shadda on the ra, so you can make it darara, okay? And darara is actually a word, is actually a root. It means to harm, impair, to damage. Is it not? Are we not getting the same flavors here? Darama, which is the same letters in the root of Ramadan, okay, is to catch fire, to blaze, to kindle. And it's funny because in Sanskrit you get dharma. Dharma is it means the eternal natural way. When you're with that, it's and dharma. We're not going through the meaning of salah now, but salah is actually means to join something. To join yourself with something. It's like a duty. And dharma, that's what it means in Sanskrit, like the eternal natural way, to follow the dharma of something, to follow the duty, to follow the natural way of something. So it has a similar inclination to actually the word salah, but that's actually probably where the root dharma comes from dharma in Arabic. I've mentioned before about Ramadan, Ramdian in Sanskrit, meaning to meditate on the one that shines in the heart. If you've watched the video. We have dhamma here, but again, there's a shadda, so it can be dhammama, means to bring together, join, unite, embrace. Dhamara, okay? Similar, we're just flipping the root of Ramadan, okay? Dhamara, but to become lean, dry up, conceal. Isn't that similar to scorched heat? We see here, rada. Now let's change the mean for an alif maksura here. Radaya. Okay, or rada, like if you know someone called rida, it means to be satisfied. Isn't that the opposite of, pain, scorchedness, and grief? It's almost like, as I said before, when you flip the root, you get almost the opposite meaning, as I showed with Sama. The point of this video is to show you that this claim that, oh, well, how do you know the lexicons are true? God is saying that he sent down an Arabic recitation. And another thing, the word araba, the root, actually means clear. It means to make something clear. Okay? To claim that the lexicons, we don't know what they mean, this is true, and it's an assumption we make. However, the assumption is jumped over if we can find a way to prove that each letter of the Arabic language has a separate meaning, and that each letter represents something, and the contraction of God's message into words is perfectly done, because each letter must directly represents what God intends it to mean. I just want to shout out brother Igor here in his YouTube channel. You should check it out. It's called Sola Qur'ana. put a link for it at the bottom. We have both been playing with this idea of roots over time, and we're both finding the same thing, that this is an undeniable fact that when you play with the roots you find similar meanings. And what this is, again, not the point of the video, you can find it on his channel, but what you can find is actually we're finding that the root system we were given by all these Orientalists and Arabists like Hans Wehr, you know, like Hedwig Klein, who aided in the writing of this book, like Lane's Lexicon and all these people, that it also in and of itself is up for question. The only thing that is not up for question in our methodology is the Qur'an and the text in the Qur'an. Everything other than that is up for question. We don't make assumptions. Like that saying, you know, assumptions are the mother of all, you know, F-ups or mess-ups, let's put it like that. Well, we take that very seriously here. What we are finding is what I wrote here, is that the vowels are not part of the root. So actually, according to that system, again, refer to Brother Igor's channel for this, but sawama, samama, wasama, and samaya are all the same, coming from the same root. You know, they're all the same because the vowels are not part of that. That may be confusing to some, but again, this is for the Arabic speaker and the interested student. Refer to Brother Igor's work. I'll make more videos on this in the future, but just as an overall, you know, something very interesting. If we want to find out more about why we think this, refer to verse 29, Surah 2, verse 29, onwards to Surah 2, verse 33, of why we believe that Arabic is a natural language. If anyone has any questions, don't feel free to ask me and I will answer. The document I went through in the video I made here, I will either put it in the link in the description, or you can ask me for it and I'll send it to you, so you can go through it yourself. And thank you very much for listening, and Salaam alaikum.